to welcome to From Z to X with Sean and Evita Duffy,
Hey, everybody,
a new podcast from the Federalist where we talk about pop culture and politics.
with dad and daughter.
Yeah. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is 50 Cent and Chelsea Handler, his ex-girlfriend, who apparently thinks that he needs to reevaluate his blackness.
50 Cent, the rapper.
The rapper for voting for saying on Instagram now saying he's going to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
But first, we're going to talk about Kappa Alpha Theta, a sorority that has done some very interesting things in recent events.
So let me tell you all what happened here. So Kappa Alpha Theta is at the University of Kansas. A sorority sister, Catherine Lauer, retweeted Candace Owens. And this was the tweet that Catherine retweeted. It says, "Black Lives Matter is an organization of white men using the faces of dead black people to raise millions of dollars toward electing white Democrats into positions of power. It is the most flagrantly racist organization in America." So that was a tweet by Candace Owens, and Catherine retweeted it. And for that, Catherine was suspended from the sorority, and she didn't break any bylaws, she didn't break any rules, but they said that Catherine didn't meet their values and that she disrespected some of the women in the sorority. And so as a punishment, she was put on probation. She had to apologize for her white privilege, and she had to take a week of personal reflection and cleansing because she retweeted Candace Owens. And so as a dad, I hear a story like that about a sorority and how they're treating someone who's expressing a political opinion. Is that happening frequently on campuses? Is this an outlier or is this a norm?
So I liked this story a lot because it shed light on what the majority of sororities across America have been doing recently, and they are, out of everybody, every group on campus, the white sorority girls are the wokest of them all. I mean, they are, and the most stifling, I think, too, because with their bylaws and their leadership, they're able to really stifle and say what girls can and can't post or say publicly or think about in regards to politics. So to be clear, a lot of sororities have rules where they can say, okay, you're not allowed to post things on your story or on your Instagram of you drinking or doing things that would reflect poorly on the sorority. But that has changed to now shifting to we're gonna decide what you can and can't say publicly. And so that this is a great example of that, and it happens all the time. And actually, the amount of wokeness in sororities has gotten so stifling that actually I have a lot of friends who had to just de-affiliate because they couldn't handle from the sorority, right? They couldn't handle it anymore. I mean, there was so many diversity training and your implicit bias and all these different things that they were doing.
Privilege.
Right. Yeah. And then feeling like they can't say what they think on social media, it's just too much. And so they just left. And the person that I'm talking about is actually, she's not white anyway. She's they're like, oh, you have to, reevaluate your privilege and all these things. I mean, this girl's an Indian girl. I mean,
Yeah. So what I find interesting here is that, again, she didn't violate any rules. She didn't violate any of the bylaws. However, they've taken this aggressive action. And maybe if I was to, flip the script and go, okay, I see why they would have done it, because obviously Candace Owens is attacking Black Lives Matter. I don't think maybe many people realize the difference between supporting Black lives and the organization Black Lives Matter, which is a Marxist organization that doesn't believe in the nuclear family. They have a whole bunch of radical views, which I don't think fit in with the majority viewpoint, of American society. Whether you're white, black, brown, or Asian, we believe in families. I mean, families are good things. This organization doesn't believe in it. They're at the far leftist extreme. And so maybe, though, they thought that by retweeting Candace Owens, who, by the way, is an African-American woman, maybe she was being racially insensitive or racist herself. And maybe that was the reaction that came from the sorority as opposed to, some shutdown of political or free speech.
Yeah, I mean that's possible. I mean, it is. They do have all these different rules, and I mean, it makes sense that a lot of people who are just they repost the black square, but they don't really know what Black Lives Matter means, would think that, oh, she's actually being racist, and doesn't believe that Black Lives Matter, just as Black Lives Matter, by reposting this tweet. And so that's definitely possible, but it's also not right. And sororities and fraternities, more so with sororities and fraternities, but they both, hold a significant portion of campus, communities. And so there's a lot of students who are part of them and are unfortunately feeling very stifled because of the rules that the leadership in the sororities and fraternities have
Well,
made.
I think there'd be a time in American politics where strong young women and men, if they were confronted with this situation, they would push back really hard because they believe they should have the right to say what they think. They should be able to express
Mhm.
themselves, and they would be offended that an organization like this, their sorority, could ostracize them and make them, apologize for their white privilege, and that's not happening now. That we're not raising kids that can say, "Listen, I'm sorry, I'm not going to put up with it. If you're going to make me, cleanse myself for a week, I don't want to be part of these sisters." The
Right.
problem is, though, I think on campuses, which I hear from you and I read about, obviously I'm not in college campuses anymore, but
Or in a sorority.
or in a sorority, right? But there's so much social pressure to fit in, so much political social pressure, whether it's in your support for Trump versus Biden, or if it's Black Lives Matter, or if it's the environmental movement, the pressure is conformity. And I think what's been so great about America is one, we have this unique group of people, very diverse, that have different ways of thinking. And I think the most creativity comes, the most innovation comes from people who think outside the box. We're different in America because we all don't think the same. That's really good. And here we're trying to train people to think as one. There's one correct viewpoint. And if you don't,
Scrap that.
then you're going to be kicked out. You're going to be ostracized. You're going to be excluded. And now there's all this pressure, and I think it comes from social media that people then comply, and we lose freedom of speech. And by the way, it just even if you don't believe it, you'll just chill your speech. You just won't say anything. You just won't speak up. You'll be one of those silent people who won't lend their voice to a movement because you don't want to be attacked. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really sad state of affairs for sororities, but also for college campuses.
Yeah, and I think that we're definitely seeing an evolution of what is like, the kind of what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable speech on campus. And so in this article that we read, they said that the girl who reposted Candace Owens didn't go against any of their bylaws, and that she needed to cleanse herself just off of their orders, but not based off of any rules that they had. I know for a fact there are sororities across the country who are switching and making things like political speech that is acceptable and isn't part of their bylaws, and is making it institutionalized. Really,
Right.
the kind of in hostility to different opinions. And so, yeah, go ahead.
But no, but I think then the role is who pays for the sorority or the fraternity? Moms and dads pay for that, right? The kids aren't usually paying for that. The moms and dads are paying for their kids to join this soul crushing organization that don't won't let you think.
Yeah.
So if you're a parent, check out the sorority or the fraternity that your child is rushing for, that they want to join. And if these are the rules they have in place, these are the bylaws they have in place, don't pay for it. Why would we pay to have our kids indoctrinated?
Mhm.
I said no. I did. I was like, I'm not paying for a sorority. Um, do the same due
I didn't ask
diligence.
really. That's just
Well, she tried to bring it up, and I said no. But I do think that if we as parents have to be responsible, and we should look and see, what are the rules of this organization, and if they don't fit within American norms of free speech and political diversity, don't pay for it. And if you don't pay for it, your kid can't join it. And then maybe sororities and fraternities might have to rethink how they're engaging with young people to make sure parents are going to pay for it because they're not this group think organization. Am I wrong on that?
No, I don't. I think that that's pretty fair, and I also think that this goes into colleges in general. I mean,
Totally
if
agree.
if, if a college is being explicitly hostile towards free speech and
Every
alternate
college.
opinions, right? Then I mean, then you should really think about whether that's worth your time and your money
Yeah, where we send
investment.
them. Totally.
Right. Okay, so now let's move on to 50 Cent. He's a rapper. He's very famous, and you don't know him, but he's a very famous guy. And recently, he reposted on his Instagram a screenshot of the Biden tax plan, and said that 64% in taxes in New York City is not worth his time, and he's going to vote for Donald Trump. And a lot of people didn't like that, including his ex girlfriend Chelsea Handler, who actually said on Jimmy Fallon that she had to remind him that he is a black person in America. So this white woman has to remind him that he's a black person and can't be voting for Donald Trump because of his skin color, which I don't know about you, but it sounds kind of racist.
Well, I mean, for me, I look at that and go, so when does our skin color dictate, our political views, right? I mean, It's
Mhm.
how we were raised and how we view the world. And for 50 Cent, it's probably how much money he makes. And he's like, listen, I'm willing to pay my taxes. But in New York City, you probably are approaching 55% of what you make is going to go to taxes, federal, state, and local taxes in the city. And I believe that it doesn't matter if you're, whatever your, racial makeup is, we want freedom. We want opportunity. We want better paying jobs. We want liberty. And everybody yearns for that. That's why so many people around the world want to come to America from all different parts of the world, because that's what we offer people
Mhm.
is opportunity and upward mobility. And here you have 50 Cent, who I think you mentioned before, was started off as a drug dealer, and he has a criminal history. And here he is worth millions of dollars, wildly successful, and says, listen, I don't want to pay the crazy Biden taxes.
Mhm.
And by the way, Donald Trump has been pretty good for our community. I'm with Trump. And for saying that, you have his white girlfriend saying, I have to remind you that you're black. And 50 Cent's like, I want to be 50 Cent. I don't want to be 20 Cent. I'm 50 Cent. Don't take my money. Which,
Right.
who can't not relate with that?
No, and there's been so many other celebrities who have experienced the same thing. I mean, Kanye West was one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, even Cardi B posted this really viral video a few years ago of her
Right.
saying, yeah, I mean, she was saying, I don't, where's my money? Why, like the government's taking all my money. Why does New York City still look like crap? What are they doing? Where is my money? And she even got some, some bad press for that. And even just asking the question, like, you're not allowed to ask where your money and your taxes are going, and you're not allowed to question Joe Biden or his plan at all. Otherwise, you're a racist for aligning yourself with Trump.
I think in that Cardi B video, she actually said, if I actually give money to support a child in some foreign country, they send me monthly updates. They tell me how they spend my
Yeah,
money.
she wants
How
what
do
she
they
wants
spend
her to
my
see.
money?
Yeah.
Give me the info on where my money's being spent. And now she's a big Biden
Mhm.
supporter, but it went viral because people are like, yeah, how are you guys wasting my money? And as a former member of Congress, there's a lot of great spending, but there is so much waste in
Yeah.
government. And I think it's fair to ask, how are you spending my hard-earned dollar? But I think
Yeah.
but on the 50 Cent story, I think what's happening in America is that you have, again, 50 Cent, you mentioned Kanye, I think Ice Cube, you have very high profile African Americans who are saying, listen, I'm not bound to a party because of my skin color. I'm going to look at the candidates and what they've done. In the last debate, uh, I thought it was really impressive that Donald Trump called out Joe Biden to say, Joe, with your 1992 crime bill, you put more African American young men in prison than anybody else in American history. And me, Donald Trump, what I've done is I did criminal justice reform. I'm letting people out of prison who are unfairly convicted. I'm funding historically black colleges. I'm doing opportunity zones where we have more investments in your communities, which means more jobs, more opportunity, and rising wages. And you put people in prison, Joe. And I think a lot of the community sees that and goes, why am I bound to a Democrat Party who, by the way, for 50 years hasn't done anything for us, hasn't made
Right.
my life better? Look at this. Look at the cities that are the most progressive liberal cities in America: Chicago, Baltimore, LA, and they're kind of disasters. And why shouldn't we reflect upon who we vote for?
But I think that's an interesting point because the, you see these people who have these high profile, stars who have all these internal conflicts, thinking, okay, what why am I still voting Democrat? And what this as soon as they do, like with Cardi B, shut down
Oh,
immediately, right? I mean, so that's the culture that we've created. They're not allowed to think freely like that. I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
but if you have enough money and you have enough power and you control your destiny like Kanye or 50 Cent, you're like, listen, you guys can't do anything to me.
right.
I've
The
made it.
untouchables.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna speak my mind. Where a lot of people, and if you look out in Hollywood, in the whether you're you run a camera or you're in front of the screen, you can't be a Republican, you can't be a Trump supporter, or you won't work. These guys are in a position where they're like, I can say what I want because I have the freedom of money and my own power that I've created, and I can say what I want. And I think a lot of everyone looks at that and gives a clap to go, that's awesome because you're standing up against the man and the machine and saying, I'm going to vote
Yeah.
my conscience and my will.
Which they can. But a lot of people
Can't.
who aren't in that position, who are like people, just regular folks like you and I, or people that we see on campus. I know I have a lot of friends who are minorities who they feel like identifying as a conservative or a Trump supporter is really, puts a target on their back. More so than a regular white kid, which is really interesting that liberals would want to
Yeah,
make people of color feel that way. And I think that another thing that's really important to think about um, is why are we so upset? Why are we so why are leftists so threatened by African Americans and Hispanics wanting to vote conservative? Why is 50 Cent wanting
such a threat.
right? Why is it such a threat?
Why is it? So here's the answer. So Republicans normally get 8% of the African American vote. If that goes from 8% to 13% of the African American vote, election's over. Republicans win all kinds of states, and that's why in this next election, I think the unknown factor is, how much of the African American vote does Donald Trump get? If he got 8% in 2016,
Mhm.
if he gets 13, 14, 20%, you're going to see President Trump win all kinds of different states that no one saw in play, because the power of the African American vote is
Mhm.
huge, and all you have to do is make up 5, 6, 7 more percent, and you change the whole electoral map. And that's why you can't let folks in the African American community vote a different way than Democrat, because if people start to leave, the whole Democrat coalition starts to collapse. But again, this is just common sense. You look at the results of leftism and liberalism and conservatism, and I think more people, it doesn't matter if, again, no matter what race you are, the Trump economy was great for everybody. There were more jobs, more opportunity before the pandemic across the board. And a lot of people actually say, I don't really like Donald Trump. I don't like the tweets. I don't like the attitude. But let me tell you what, I've never done better in my life. My family was never doing better than under the Trump years. And you know what? I like my family. I like our success. And I want more of that. I'm voting for Donald Trump because I've seen this liberal radicalism, in my cities or in my state. And I don't want that. I want the money. I want
Right.
the cash. I want the payout.
Yeah, and I mean Trump more so than any other president that we've seen in recent history on the Republican side has really tapped into to the African American vote, and he said, I'm going to go after, I'm going to address criminal justice reform. I'm going to make
Yeah.
sure I'm going to create opportunity zones in these areas. I'm going to create a Black Voices for Trump movement. I mean, he's really addressed them in a way that other Republican presidents haven't, and I think that it's really starting to pay off.
Well, I think what's interesting is Donald Trump has tried,
Right,
right? Most Republican candidates don't try,
right,
and they don't reach out, and they don't say, I'm gonna fight for you. I'm gonna work for you." And so, why would the community actually go, "I'm gonna support you"? You don't even talk to me. Where Donald Trump has actually said, "Not only am I gonna talk to you, but I'm gonna work for you, and I'm gonna
mhm,
change policy that makes your life better." And now, when he's running for reelection, he can say, "Listen, look at what I've done. Look
right.
at the successes that we've had together. Let's not let it end." And by the way, Joe Biden, look what he's done. He puts you in prison. And I think that's a really powerful motivator. And just by the way, there's a tracking poll of Donald Trump's approval rating in the African American community.
Mhm.
And he was going at about 23, 24, 25%. After the debate, he bumped up to 46%. I think it was that effective in what he did, talking about
I
Joe
did not
Biden's
know that.
record and Donald Trump's record. So this matters.
Mhm.
These votes matter. The Hispanic vote in Florida, in Texas, and
Right.
Arizona matters. And so that's why you see so many people playing for everybody in America, because it goes back to my original. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot of people, but it goes
Mhm.
back to my original point that freedom and opportunity, all our hearts are red. We all yearn for that. There's no racial background that makes
Mhm.
us yearn for that less. And as 50 Cent said, I yearn for lower taxes. I want to keep more of my hard-earned money. What a great thing. How Republican of him to go, I want to keep more of my cash.
Right.
And how unfair for you to take 55% of the hard-earned money that I make.
Right.
Right?
That's
Am I right?
exactly right. No, you're exactly right about that.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm sitting here riffing. So stay. I think the message here is watch what happens. With the African American vote and the Hispanic vote. I think we're going to shatter all these norms that have happened for the last 2, 3, 4 decades in voting. It's going to change
Yeah.
because of the unconventional Donald Trump and what he's done and how he's reached out.
And the rhetoric isn't working. Minorities, they aren't responding well to the kind of shutdown that the wokeists have been implementing it on everybody else.
Totally
Joe
agree with
Biden
that.
saying, "You're not Black if you don't vote for me."
He did say that, didn't he?
Yeah.
which I think even the host was, that's what do you remember that guy's name?
No.
God, the something, I forget. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. But yeah, I mean, even he was like, "What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You're not black, and we don't vote for you. You don't. Your vote doesn't mean we're black. It's anyway.
Yeah.
It's going to be fascinating to watch what happens and see how this election rolls out, and how these two topics we talked about today, whether it was 50 Cent or even the story about the sorority, I think that has a lot of Americans angered, along with tech censorship. People in this country, maybe not your generation, not maybe Gen X, but most people who are 30 and older really want a debate. They really want a conversation, and they really want to fight to make everyone's lives better. We do want to see more equality across the board and more upward mobility. And I think with President Trump, he's offered that. So it'll be interesting if he's responded with votes from those communities.
Well, anyways, it's been great. Thank you for talking with me, Dad.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All
Thanks
right.
for having us. Sorry, I talked a lot today. I apologize.
No worries.
All right.
See you guys next time.